Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Madden News Network. Tonight, we have a very special annual segment called the Years in Review, one of the most popular segments of our show. Starting off, our very first segment is the Gold Rush. Vienna and Helen, please, give us a recap of what happened.
Good day, Tom! In January 1848, James Marshall, an American carpenter, discovered gold at Sutter's Mill in California, Sierra Nevada, kicking off what would be later coined as the California Gold Rush. Many skeptics dismissed it as a shameless attempt at getting migrants to expand into unforeseen territories, but soon vials of gold began making their rounds and stirring up a glittering frenzy. Hopeful prospectors from the local rancher to the average Chinaman flocked to the coastal state in search of fortunes. What had previously been a quaint bay majoring in the trade of animal products soon expanded into a bustling industry. We have here with me a miner from the state of California. Hello, sir. What is your name?
Don Wicks, sir.
Yes, Mr. Wicks. May I ask you when you learned of gold in California?
Flocks of gold from the American River were circulating my town for weeks. Descriptions of beautiful flowers, great herds of cattle, and blue skies filled me with wonder. When a friend told me he was heading off to Cali, I decided to come with.
So did you only come alone with your friend?
No, I brought my wife and kids.
Well, that's wonderful. You can start a new life here. Tell me about the journey.
It was May when we started, I being 20 years of age. It had only been a month when we were attacked by Indians who surrounded us on horseback. We offered them flour and tobacco and they let us off peacefully. We walked 14 to 16 miles a day. It was awful walking up the mountains. There were great rocks that our wagons bumped over. The journey was particularly tolling on my wife who was pregnant at the time. Altogether, the trip was exceptionally fortunate. I know of plenty whose journeys were worse. We were received at Napa by a good friend who came before us, right when the first visitors of gold arrived.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So how has it been in California?
The largest nugget I found was the size of a hickory nut. The others are small, thin scales. I'm holding on to hope though. Some of my friends have gotten lucky finds once in a while, and I'm waiting for mine.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Recent reports state that the situation may become more dire as the surface gold levels out and the average Joe with his pick and shovel takes home only flakes if he's lucky. There has been talks of new technology that might help extract the gold that is deeper down in the earth. For more on this, we go to senior official of an up-and-coming mining joint stock operation, Vienna Lin. Vienna, it seems that poor John out there has moved all the way to California in search of riches to only find muddy gravel. Is there still any hope for him?
Look, there's still gold out there. If it's not on the surface, there's bound to be a million underneath. Some smart fellow had diverted water from rivers to collect the gold and riverbeds, but that's not nearly enough. I can't talk too much about industry secrets, but some processes involving water jets are being developed by companies that could help produce gravel much faster. We need folks like John to help work the process and separate gold from grime.
Well, it looks like John could still have a chance from what you said, but it seems like mining on his own hook is no longer an option.
Certainly, a man can't pay nothing these days.
Well, thank you, Fiona. And that concludes our annual Years in Review segment. I'm Helen Lee. Stay tuned for more news of the decade.
Thanks. Wow, now wasn't that wonderful? Coming up next, the Compromise of 1850, where we have Tom to tell us more about that. Tom? Thank you, Anchor Tom. So, as we all know, the Compromise of 1850 was passed in September of 1850. It was made to address the issues our country has faced since it was founded roughly 100 years ago. The 5 laws that passed as part of the compromise dealt with slavery and our expansion of territory. This all started back in 1849 when California put in a request to join the Union. This led to Senator Henry Clay attempting to seek a compromise in order to avert a crisis. In the end, there were 5 laws enacted. The laws made slavery legal, however, the slave trade was now illegal. The Union now has California as a free state, and the states of Utah and New Mexico will use popular sovereignty as to decide if they will allow slavery. The boundaries for the southern state of Texas were redefined after the conclusion of the Mexican-American War. It lost its claims to sections of New Mexico. However, Texas received $10 million in compensation. Last but not least, the new Fugitive Slave Act now requires citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves. It also now denies slaves to a trial by jury. With all these new laws, I have an Ohio resident here with me to share their opinions. Hello, sir. How do you feel about these new laws?
Yeah, I think it's nice that California is now a part of the Union and that the Mexican-American War is finally over. However, the new laws making the slave trade illegal is a good step towards a union that is free of slavery. That doesn't take away from the fact that now it is a law that people must assist in the capture and return of slaves. Why should I help someone I don't even know? Especially when it's something as bad as slavery, as they don't even have the right to a trial? Unbelievable. I hope one day we can get rid of this system.
Alright, thank you very much for your time, and back to the studio. Thank you very much. That was very informative and educational for the people at home. Now, this brings us to our final segment of our Years in Review. The congressional elections was something we just couldn't leave out. We have an exclusive interview with Senators Daniel Webster and John C. Calhoun. As we all know, these two congressmen, along with the great compromiser Henry Clay, played a crucial role for the Compromise of 1850. Let's now hear their views and thoughts on the issue. Standing to my right, we have Senator Mr. Calhoun from the South, representing the state of South Carolina, and to my left we have Senator Mr. Webster from the North, representing New Hampshire and Massachusetts in the Congress. And as many of us know, the two men we have here share some really different political views on some of the major topics of this year. Let's interview Mr. Calhoun first. I understand that Senator Mr. Calhoun had your colleague James Mason help you deliver your speech in front of the Senate expressing your opposition to the compromise on March 4th. Could you go over some of the main reasons behind your opposition to the compromise?
Well, first of all, I strongly believe in states' rights over federal power. If a state does not believe a federal law is constitutional, then it has no reason to obey it. I think that the South has already given up so much that has little left to give up. We are simply asking for justice. If we can't even get the justice we deserve, I would once again advise for the southern states to succeed from the Union that I know one day will soon be broken.
I'm sure that many Southerners will also agree with that statement you just made. But let's hear from what Mr. Webster has to say about the compromise. As we all know, on March 7th, Mr. Webster delivered a speech just shortly after in response to Mr. Calhoun's address.
Yes, that is indeed correct.
Very well, let's get started. First question, how do you feel about the compromise? After hearing what Mr. Calhoun had said regarding the compromise, what do you agree or disagree with?
While I believe that it is pointless for the Congress to argue over slavery in territories where it already exists, or worry about the spread of slavery in the new territories. I do agree with Calhoun that slavery in the South should be respected, and that's why I urge Northerners to therefore help with the return of fugitive slaves to their owners. I'm sure many Northern abolitionists are upset about the Fugitive Slave Act, but it's either that or potential bloodshed. I believe the compromise is the only way that the Union can prevent a civil war.
I see your point there. Mr. Calhoun, anything to say back?
You just don't get it, do you, Webster? This compromise will be what brings us to war. The South is getting the short end of the stick here. We need the slave trade for our economy, and now you take that away from us? Slavery is an important labor that the South needs to survive, and our institutions should be respected. Even ignoring slavery aside, the Union now has California, which has been booming because of the gold rush. This compromise is taking the South's former glory and completely imbalances our power.
Mr. Webster, Mr. Calhoun seems fairly upset at your response. What do you have to say in regards to the South's slave trade ban?
I think that Calhoun fails to realize that Clay's compromise was very lenient on the South. They could have banned slavery as a whole and not just the trade of them. What's most important here is that Calhoun does not see slavery as an immoral, cruel concept. Trust me, Anchor, I want to abolish slavery, but if we did something like that, the South will call for secession. And I know there's no such thing as a peaceful secession. Secession does not bring peace, it only brings war. For now, I'll keep my moral opinions aside.
Wow, that was quite a response. On to the next question. Mr. Calhoun, what did you think about the election results to the House of Representatives for the 31st Congress?
To be honest, there was no doubt that the Democrats were going to win the election results for this 31st Congress. The Whigs did not support the Mexican-American War, and it is one of the major reasons why the Whigs started to lose their House majority for the election. Howell Cobb was elected by our Democrats to the 31st Congress. Of course, we were proud to have him elected as Speaker of the House and helping our party find itself in control of both House and Senate organizations. However, I must say I've become quite disappointed at Cobb. He has become such a supporter of the compromise as a Union Democrat. My hope is that he'd give the South a decent say on slavery as the new Speaker of the House and as a Southerner, but not only did he rule in favor of the compromise, but he is one of the few Southerners in Congress which refused to sign my Southern address.
I see. And Webster, what do you think?
Well, despite my differences with Mr. Cobb, I think he did the right thing by voting in favor of the compromise. Even though Winthrop did not win the recent election to the 31st Congress, Northern and Southern Whigs had him elected in 1847, and he had done a great job in the position as previous Speaker of the House. He had commanded the position with fairness and distinction, and that was why the Northern Whigs nominated him again for the recent election. And in response to what Mr. Calhoun stated previously about Whigs not supporting the Mexican-American War, I just have to say that even if I knew that we would win the war, I would still have opposed the war. I was always worried about the war ruining the already fragile balance of slave and free states, and just look at where the war has brought us now.
Well, thanks for your answer, Webster. Right, and thank you both very much for your time. And let's get back to the studio. Alright, welcome back to the studio. As much as it pains me to say it, this concludes our years in review. Please remember to stay safe, and I wish you all the best.